Welcome to the deep dive. We've just been digging through some uh, really fascinating material. It's all focused on this idea the authors are calling present moment wealth, redefining abundance.
Now, normally when you hear wealth, you probably think, stocks, retirement funds, maybe a big number in your bank account, right?
Mhm.
But these sources we looked at, they argue that that way of thinking isn't just like missing something, it's actually kind of flawed at its core. So let's really try to unpack this pretty radical idea. What if the biggest fortune you could ever have isn't measured in dollars or pounds, but,
Yeah.
well, in seconds, in the quality of your attention? It's about tapping into a kind of richness that actually changes how you experience time itself. Yeah, and that really brings us straight to the central paradox, doesn't it? Society, for ages, has basically told us that real wealth comes from just accumulating more stuff, more money. We chase the next pay rise, the next investment win. But in doing that, we often end up feeling, well, poorer in the currency that actually lets us live, which is the present moment. So the core idea in these readings is that maybe, just maybe, true affluence isn't about grabbing more, but about being willing to let go of certain things.
That's a massive pivot, a really big shift. And our goal here today isn't just to talk philosophy, is to give you the practical roadmap we pulled from these sources. How you can actually find that immediate, genuine richness in your everyday life, starting, like, right now. Okay, so let's jump into segment one, beyond bank accounts. We really need to pick apart why this narrow focus society has on money, the endless chase for more dollars, so often leaves people feeling, well, empty, even when they achieve a lot.
hmm The sources seem to point to a couple of key reasons for that emptiness. First, traditional wealth. It's all external, right? It's designed to make you feel good based on comparing yourself to others or pinning hopes on the future. And second, it traps us on what psychologists sometimes call the hedonic treadmill. You hit a goal, you get that little burst of happiness, sure.
Yeah, that temporary high.
Exactly. But then your baseline feeling of satisfaction just kind of resets, and you find yourself needing the next bigger goal to feel okay again. So you're always striving, which is pretty much the opposite of being rich in the present.
So present moment wealth, then.
hmm
It's defined as this immediate richness in experience. That's the key difference from accumulation, which is always looking ahead.
Precisely. The whole focus shifts away from
Mhm.
some hypothetical future payoff and towards what you can actually feel, sense, and experience right now. Tangible stuff. And the real cost of constantly chasing the future, it isn't just the stress, although that's part of it. It's that by always putting off satisfaction, waiting for that next milestone, you're basically stealing from the only time you actually have abundance, which is today.
Okay, and this is where it got really interesting for me. The material doesn't just make a feeling-based argument. It actually points to the neuroscience. What about delayed gratification? We're always told that's a virtue, right? But how does it tie into the pitfalls of being too future-focused?
Yeah, this is such a critical point. Delayed gratification is useful, obviously. For
Mm.
achieving long-term goals, you need it. But when that mindset of delay takes over everything, it can become, well, almost pathological. The research often highlights this tension in the brain. You've got the prefrontal cortex, that's your planning, goal-setting part. And then you've got the limbic system, more about immediate feelings, sensory input.
Right, the planner versus the feeler.
Kind of, yeah. And when that prefrontal cortex is constantly running the show, always saying, nope, can't enjoy this now, got to plan for that future thing, it actually forces a kind of disconnect from the present. So the unintended consequence is that we end up valuing this mental idea of a future more than the actual lived reality of right now. That future chase becomes a habit. It stops us from really engaging with the moments we're in and leaves us feeling disconnected, empty
Mm.
even.
That makes a lot of sense, grounding the brain.
Right.
But I have to push back a little here because, we live in the real world.
Yeah.
You do have bills to pay, mortgages, retirement planning. How did the authors draw the line between that destructive future chasing you mentioned and just responsible financial planning? Are they saying don't save money?
No, no, not at all. That's a common misconception.
Huh.
The key distinction they make is in the motivation, the why behind it, and the internal story you tell yourself. Responsible saving is usually driven by a desire for security. It's practical. Destructive chasing, on the other hand, is often driven by this underlying belief that you're somehow not enough,
Yeah.
that you won't be enough until you hit that future financial target.
Ah, okay. So it's the feeling underneath the action.
Exactly. The research suggests you can absolutely have savings goals, plan for the future, but do it without sacrificing your attention, your life right now. You plan for the future, but you live from the present. And the key seems to be using some practical exercises to gently nudge that focus away from constant future worry and back towards the tangible now.
Okay, that clarifies it. We're not just like outsourcing our happiness to some future bank statement. Makes sense. So what are those practical tools then? Let's get into the how-to segment 2, cultivating your inner gold mine. How do we actually unlock this inner richness day to day, especially if life feels busy?
Well, the absolute cornerstone, mentioned again and again in the studies cited, is mindfulness. Mindfulness is presented as pretty much the essential key. And it's not about emptying your mind or stopping thoughts, which is another common misunderstanding. It's more about intentionally choosing where you place your attention. And importantly, the sources make it really accessible. They lay out simple techniques you can literally do right now, even in the middle of a hectic workday, no retreat needed.
Okay, mindfulness is about being present. But what about our mindset? Because it's easy when you stop chasing the future to just start dwelling on past regrets or focusing on what you feel you lack now. How do we adjust that internal framework?
Right, that's where gratitude comes in. Gratitude is described as the conscious practice of shifting your internal narrative, moving away from a feeling of scarcity towards appreciation. And it's not about pretending everything's perfect, forced positivity. It's about actively noticing and focusing on the good that is actually present. Could be tiny things. The fact you can breathe easily, the taste of your coffee, having a roof overhead. One study I mentioned specifically showed that this kind of internal appreciation literally lowers stress hormones like cortisol almost instantly, which directly boosts your immediate sense of wealth, your inner richness, totally separate from your bank account.
Interesting. And I was really drawn to the part about deep sensory engagement. We hear cliches like stop and smell the roses, but these sources seem to describe a more specific technique using all 5 senses. Can you tell us more about the sensory wealth exercise?
Yes. This is one of the most practical takeaways, I think. The goal is simply to anchor yourself fully in a moment using systematic sensory input. So let's say you're just walking from your desk to the kitchen. Instead of being lost in thought, you intentionally check in with your senses. What can you smell? Coffee brewing. Disinfectant. What's the actual feeling of the floor under your feet? Carpet. Tile. What sounds are there? Beyond the obvious. The hum of the fridge. Distant traffic.
So really dialing into the physical details.
Exactly. The sources really highlight this as a powerful tool for grounding yourself, especially during stressful moments or transitions. By consciously cycling through all 5 senses, taste, touch, sight, sound, smell, you essentially pull your mind out of abstract worries or future planning and plant it firmly in the undeniable reality of the physical world around you. It transforms even mundane seconds into something, richer, more tangible, memorable even.
That really does offer a way to feel like immediately more affluent, doesn't it? Without anything external changing. Okay, so now we get to the challenge of making this stick, sustainability. Because let's face it, we live in a world that's constantly screaming about speed, accumulation, getting ahead. How do we make this shift sustainable? How do we truly move beyond accumulation as our main driver?
Well, the sources point to a couple of maybe counterintuitive ways to create the necessary space for this. The first one is simplification, decluttering. And this isn't just about tidying your closet, although that can help. It's about reducing all kinds of noise, digital alerts, pinging constantly, an overpacked schedule, even just mental clutter from too many commitments.
So clutter takes up brain space.
Exactly. All that clutter demands cognitive bandwidth. Simplifying your life, trimming the excess, literally creates the mental space needed to actually notice and appreciate the present moment. If your mind's constantly juggling too much, it just can't be fully present.
So decluttering is like a mental practice too, not just physical. That's a really interesting link. What about financial actions? Is there something we can do with money that reinforces this internal shift away from scarcity?
Yes, and this was another strong point that came up repeatedly. It's the link between generosity and feeling more abundant.
That sounds backwards, right? Giving stuff away when you're trying to feel richer.
It does seem contradictory on the surface, but the research indicates that the very act of giving, whether it's time, money, resources, reinforces an internal story that you have enough to share. It shifts your core feeling from one of not enough, of scarcity, to one of enough, maybe even overflow. And that feeling is the essence of present moment wealth, whatever your actual bank balance says.
Okay, this all sounds wonderful when things are going smoothly. But what about when life throws curveballs? A job loss, a health scare, serious uncertainty. How does focusing on the present moment help them? That's actually where this practice shows its true value. It's about building resilience. Think about it. Traditional wealth, money, assets, it's volatile. It can be affected by markets, by external events completely outside your control,
Right, good.
disappear overnight.
It can, but present moment wealth, that's an internal skill. It's your ability to connect with the present, whatever it holds. So when those external challenges hit, and they will, your fundamental sense of security isn't solely dependent on fragile outside circumstances. The ability to find that inner richness, to ground yourself in the solid reality of this moment, even if it's difficult, that becomes your most reliable asset. That's resilience.
This whole approach feels like a direct challenge, maybe even an attack, on what the source has called hustle culture, that constant pressure to optimize every second for future gain.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fundamental clash. Hustle culture basically says your value is tied to your output, your productivity aimed at the future. Every moment needs to be leveraged for some later payoff. The roadmap from these sources completely flips that. It suggests true fulfillment, true wealth, comes from integrating this present moment awareness into your daily life, making it a way of being, not just another task on your to-do list.
So it changes how you even think about productivity.
Totally. Instead of just asking, how much did I get done today? You might start asking, how much quality attention did I bring to whatever I was doing? How present was I? The sources aren't arguing for laziness or doing less necessarily. They're advocating for a path that's about, well, existing more fully within the life you actually have, striving less frantically perhaps, but experiencing more deeply.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've done this deep dive into shifting the definition of wealth, moving away from just accumulation of the dollars towards appreciation of the seconds. It's really about finding ways to be genuinely rich in the moments you're actually living through.
Yeah, the big takeaway is that the journey to a richer life, in this sense, it doesn't start next year or when you get the promotion or when you retire. It starts right now. The really profound bit is realizing that the only time we ever truly have to experience anything is this moment. Right here. If we spend all our seconds obsessing about a future that hasn't arrived, we risk missing our entire fortune along the way.
And that leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you to mull over. If you really take this on board, if you start to challenge that endless hustle and consciously integrate these present moment practices, how might that actually change the nature of your future goals? What part of that relentless accumulation mindset, maybe out just one small aspect, are you ready to let go of today? Just to make a little more space for the genuine immediate wealth of right now.